All right. Welcome to a very special episode of Haven of Horror. Doing something a little different tonight. I can hold it up to the camera properly. We're doing Hellboy, Volume 1, Seed of Destruction. And then we're also going to talk about Man Thing, and none of us have read it. We're just going to
I
predict
meant
what's
that
in
one,
Man
yeah.
Thing. So obviously, I think all of us have seen the Del Toro film except Milton.
Yeah.
I love that movie quite a bit. I'm excited to revisit it. But
I
this
think
is my first time reading this comic, which is obviously what the source material is based on. Austin, I'm going to let you do the introduction on Hellboy Volume 1.
Hellboy Volume 1 is kind of like first Hellboy story, not chronologically, but it is about some frog people show up and Rasputin is there, and they go to an old house, and like 80% of the book is at this old house.
Yeah.
There's honestly, I know I'm just kind of being a douche, but there's not like it's not really super plot driven. Like it's very much just kind of like plot point issue, plot point issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I 3 out of the 4 issues, if I'm not mistaken, take place in the same location.
So, I guess just to get this out of the way, the thing I noticed most is that this arc is kind of what Del Toro pulled from a bit, right? Because there's a lot of that
There's
movie
definitely
in
some
this
of that
book.
here.
So this is just a 4-issue miniseries, or I don't want to say miniseries, but a 4-issue arc. So I figured we might as well just start like from the beginning. You say that this is not chronologically the first one, but it is the origin, which is I find interesting.
Yeah, like you get the origin of the start, but I just mean in the sense that Hellboy's been Hellboy for like I think he says 50 years, or
Something
no,
like that.
40.
Somewhere around that time.
I think he was born 50 years ago, and he says he was a paranormal investigator 40 years ago. Anyways, so when he does like short stories, he jumps all across the timeline.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Cool.
So Doolittle, sorry, Milton, just real quick. Doolittle agreed to join us because he is a big fan of this book as well, and
Yeah.
I would say notably the art. Like the art is the big thing that attracts you to this book, or is it just the kind of fairy tale like?
Well, yeah, I think for me, because I was gonna go into like best thing, worst thing at some point, most likely during this, but I think overall, best thing is absolutely the art. There was a period of time when I was younger where I wouldn't read Hellboy if it wasn't drawn by Mignola, and that quickly faded because a lot of the really important stuff later on is not drawn by Mignola, so that kind of fell
Oh,
through.
interesting.
But a lot of, but no, but most of it, most of the main Hellboy stuff is drawn by Mignola. He has some other artists doing other stuff, like the spin-off series, like with like Ape Seed being BPRD is drawn by other people. But it's just really, I love his kind of the combination of like the curvy kind of crackle and the German expressionism, you know, like the kind of influence also from Alex Toth, you know, just really, really well done. And I think that his character designs are just inspired.
Yeah.
And it's been doing it on me too. You know, really, really good stuff.
Yeah, so I normally prefer a more traditional art style, like, more mainstream art. But I really liked this art, especially. I think my favorite part was like the Hellboy reaction shots because they look both funny and awesome at the same time.
Hellboy reaction shots are always awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the coloring too. It's like very in theme. So like this character has this one reaction shot and this color associated with it. And you get the consistency of like red belongs to Hellboy, obviously. Light blue belongs to Abe, whatnot, so on and so forth.
Yeah. And this is not the colorist that is consistent. I believe Dave Stewart is the colorist that kind of sticks with Mignola for the majority of the time. And Dave Stewart does the cover actually, right here. But yeah, no, but it's the consistent coloring, just a different colorist.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the other thing we might as well mention before we get too far ahead of ourselves is this is also the only arc in the main book not written by Mignola. Mignola?
But it's co-written. It's
Co-written.
yeah. John Byrne also worked on this arc.
Yeah, because if you look, Austin, because I know you have the same copy I do.
Mhm.
When they're crediting it, it just says script by John Byrne, so I wasn't sure, like
Nope.
Yeah.
how much
So
of
what
that.
happened was, yeah, Mignola wasn't like confident writing it. Apparently, I think that's what I heard. So what he did was he did the story, like the story was Mignola and it was conceived by him, but the script, the actual dialogue was John
For
Byrne,
anybody
which is
wondering,
why
not that you can see
Hellboy,
it, but
yeah, that's why Hellboy doesn't sound exactly like Hellboy just yet. Is because John Byrne's writing him much more wordy, much more like a detective, which I guess makes sense. But we'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit. But yeah,
But yeah, this was the if I understand correctly, this was the real debut. I mean, it was past like the first proof of concept when he was like fighting Anubis in this desert, but Seed of Destruction
yeah,
really is like the first of Hellboy actually getting introduced to the public at large.
Mhm.
yeah. He did some like promotional comics for like magazines, I think. Um, the one you just mentioned, and also there's one where he's like fighting a giant monkey who kidnapped a woman. Uh, but this is like the first major like mini series with the character.
Yeah, and Hellboy fighting monkeys is a big thing that I think of with this series.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Obviously, my voice for Hellboy is very much the Ron Perlman version, as that's the one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah.
So it's the differences I think in this book that make it interesting. So I guess just starting at the beginning, Del Toro mostly keeps the origin intact, just to kind of compare it. Because we start out in World War II with a prologue, or I guess a narration from a. Oh, we're getting another tour.
Apparently of his crotch. No, and now of his arm. Anyway,
Most notably of World. Fuck. What's the word? A narration.
Sorry, dog
From
travels.
a soldier in World War II, and right away we get some gorgeous like landscape shots of
yeah,
wherever this is supposed to be. I'm not sure, honestly. Oh, East Bromwich, England. I
yeah.
would
It's
assume.
England.
I really do love this style. It's like a great use of both like regular and negative space, especially for shading.
Yeah,
You get
Yep.
like an interesting blocky design, and there's just enough detail, and it's consistent, which is like the best thing that you can say about like a certain artist's style is. Well, consistency
yeah.
is key.
And the
Absolutely.
shading also is not very natural either, but that's okay because it's fine. Like for what he's trying to do, like it's very dynamic. Says a lot of.
Yeah, very gothic.
Yeah,
So basically, like the arc just talks about how, the Nazis were very into the paranormal, and they have word that they're going to be trying something. Um, I would assume it's in England, or at least they're in England because that's where they think the ritual is going to go down. And they have this team of three: Malcolm Frost, Trevor Broom, and Lady Cynthia Eden Jones. Who I don't think the two of them. I know Broom is in the movie, obviously, but those other two aren't. Are they? Or are they just cameos?
They're in the 2019 movie. I'm not sure about.
I haven't seen
I
that
don't.
yet.
I don't think they're in the Del Toro film. I don't think because I
I
think
don't
that he
think so
wanted to
either.
focus a lot on Broom
Mm-hmm.
and his
Mhm.
relationship with Hellboy, which is pretty funny if you read this. And spoiler alert: Broom dies. Like
Yeah.
In the first scene.
yeah. Yeah.
Um. So, and then we also get Rasputin introduced, and the first panel with him is, I think, the first character shot where I'm like, oh, I love this art. Um, just
Rasputin
like
is
the costume
cool.
design and everything, like it looks beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
And he performs a ritual, and then I guess the idea is that that Hellboy is summoned in a completely different place than where the ritual's going down, and that just so happens to be where the soldiers are.
yeah.
Austin,
Honestly,
believable.
Rasputin has never looked more metal in a comic. than the whole, especially with the large gauntlets on his hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But Austin, is that the idea? It's just that the ritual summoned Hellboy, but to a completely different location?
Aren't they on the same island, just in different spots?
Yeah,
On that same island. That's what I thought it
Okay.
was. Because they talk about how there could be Nazis like hiding where they are, but they just don't know where they are.
Okay. If I had one complaint with some of the shots, especially in this prologue, it's hard to tell where everyone's at because a lot of the backgrounds are just like blue or a shade of blue. I don't know if you guys had that, but
I mean, I got a general sense. I understood that the Nazis were hanging out around Stonehenge or like some other like druidic ruin.
Also, this guy right here is wearing 3D glasses, and that makes me laugh.
Yeah.
But that's really all we get for the origin. Is just ritual, baby Hellboy, and then we skip forward a bunch of years, really, isn't it?
Like around 50 years, because I think it's set in present time as the time it was published. So it's like 94.
It doesn't really give us a date, at least on the page that I'm just browsing to kind of refresh myself.
So they say it's 50 years after that, and that took place in they say it's about 50 years, and that was in 1944. So it's
it'd be about
94.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give or take, yeah.
And then, not to keep comparing this to the Del Toro movie, but obviously that's the most well-known, I think, like version of this character at this point.
Yeah, well, and it's not a big action scene with his origin, which is what both Del Toro and the 2019 film do.
Yeah.
Although the 2019 one adds Lobster Johnson. This one does not have him, but it does have the Torch of Liberty. So like we are establishing that there are like kind of superhero characters.
And that's mainly because Torch of Liberty is owned by John Byrne. Which is funny because Torch of Liberty teaches Hellboy how to use his gun.
Yeah, and he gave it to him.
Yeah, and they can't reference it anymore though because that's John Byrne's character.
Yeah, they reference that in this
chapel thing in Spawn.
Yeah.
But so we skip ahead about 50 years and now we have full-grown Hellboy. And this is where I noticed, we're going a different route with this. Because him and Broom have a very different relationship in this book. And by different, I mean, you don't get a sense they had much of one, other than people telling you that they were close.
It's almost, just in what we get here, it's more of like a James Bond and M relationship where it's very, like, he calls Broom Sir and stuff. Like, it's more that kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to go on exactly. I mean, it's implied, and I guess there's... I would just hope that in read, because I know very little about the comics, I hope we can go back to a scene where we can see more development between these characters.
Yeah, we do with the short stories, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get to those eventually. I don't know if we'll do like, we'll talk about that later. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
Okay.
But yeah, so Hellboy is summoned by Broom, who talks about this expedition he took up into the mountains, and will become very important for this arc later on in the story, or in this arc. And then they're attacked by frogs. And that's the point where I went, what? It's frogs. Like,
it's an omen.
Yeah. Not like the omen that we reviewed yesterday, but an omen.
No, I like the time that Mignola gets to just like show the idea of like the African myth of like the frog portending doom and causing doom to man. I like that detail that he put in to kind of
you get a lot of that in Hellboy. The like kind of, this is like an idea that I'm taking from some sort of old folklore, and then you'll get like written like this is what that is, like this is the folklore, like you'll get like whatever, like poem or whatever, like short story.
Yeah.
So I guess we should also just say as well, this isn't traditional horror. It's more of a dark fantasy book, at least in this arc, I think, with some horror elements. But I think it's got enough that it's important to cover.
I'd
It's
say it's
superhero Lovecraft. Like it's very this book's
yeah.
very Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the term is like cosmic horror is the idea
Okay.
that they're working with essentially.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
especially in this one. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm also a kind of a noob when it comes to horror comics, so like I don't know. I've read The Walking Dead. That's it in that genre. So that's part of why I wanted
Yeah.
to do this, to expose myself to more stuff like this.
Yeah, when we
Um,
start getting more into kind of what Rasputin's doing and like these big like creatures, it's very Lovecraftian. It's very
Mhm.
cosmic
Yeah.
horror.
Yeah, and I guess looking at it again, you can kind of tell just from the beginning because you get shit like it's hard to do this because I have to look at it like backwards. Shit like this, like I don't know what that's. I forget what this is supposed to be, but it's really cool, just like designs, and I can definitely see a little bit of Lovecraft now that you've mentioned it.
A lot of tentacles. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, of
Uh,
course, the cover itself is
yeah.
It's
Um,
different.
so Austin, tell us a little bit about just because you've read this a couple of times.
yeah, but years ago, so it's not
Hmm,
fresh in my head.
okay,
Um, but sorry, what was your question? Or what
I
did you
got.
want me to do?
I guess just kind of take over from there. I don't want to be the one just talking the whole time. So we've established, Broom is attacked by these frogs. Just kind of tell us about what happens next.
So they go to investigate the family of because Broom was on this kind of uh, like trek to look for this ancient like temple place. That this family, I think it's Cavendish. Is that it? I
It's
think.
the
Hall, I think.
oh,
Brudenholm, I
and
believe. is
special
the-
shout out to this panel because it made me laugh the way his face is like drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go. This family, 9 generations of their family have died looking for this temple, and
Yeah.
Broom kind of went out with the last 3 sons. They're basically the last of this family, and they all die, or as we think. It turns out they're giant frog creatures.
Or who might as well be dead, as they are
Well, exactly.
essentially their
Yeah.
bodies possessed and transformed.
Hmm.
It's a very
Yeah.
sad story of what happens to this family. But
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because it's not uh like obviously we're not focusing on those characters. Those 3 sons don't really appear. But that entire story with them is really interesting. With that family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt Austin, but just real quick, I did want to mention that's also where we are introduced to Abe Sapien and Elizabeth Sherman.
Sherman.
Yeah. Sure.
And so at the risk of spoiling something for myself, I have to ask: are her and Hellboy at all involved in this book?
I was trying to think about that myself because it's been so long.
They don't date each other in the
Yeah,
books.
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't thinking that they did because I know
Yeah.
like Abe's very different in the books, and I think she is too.
No. Yeah. She dies at some point.
Oh, I don't know if I've gotten there.
Oh, I didn't mean to spoil that. Not really that big of a
There's going to
spoiler.
be some spoilers here, so it's not a big deal. Besides, if it's further on in the book, at least me and Austin will forget about it by the time we get
Yeah,
there, anyway.
and
So.
also the book moves in real time, anyways, and she's born in like
Oh,
62 or something like that. So it's kind of makes a lot of sense that she would pass away at some point.
that's
oh,
right.
interesting. I didn't know that it moved
Yeah.
in real
Hmm.
time like that.
No, yeah, they're just really close friends. But in the movie, Del Toro chose to make them romantically involved with each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like he chose to make Abe like more timid and more
Mhm.
of like
Yeah,
more sleuthy, I guess.
he's a
Well,
psychic.
Well, and
yeah,
just
and
to
and they make him a psychic, yeah, in the
Yeah.
movie.
Well, and just like you were saying with Elizabeth being a little bit different, in that first movie, she's kind of like Rogue from the X-Men, where she's kind of afraid of her powers. And this is
Yeah.
very much a character who has mastered her, or I don't want to say mastered because there's something later in the story, but she's not afraid of her powers. She's like a
Yeah, that
confident
stuff's
detective.
already happened. Yeah.
Um, oh, here's another good Hellboy reaction shot. I'm gonna find one of these just It's like it's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
It's really funny just how like spherical his horns are.
Yeah.
I imagine, I guess they're
circular.
supposed to be very thick or something, and then they get, I don't know.
But yeah, we meet Abe Sapien, although we don't get a good look at him in this one because he's in disguise. And it also seems this one isn't as reliant on water as the movie version. Because remember in the movie, he always, if he's out of the tank, he has those like water tank things on his neck.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one doesn't seem to need that, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is true. Like we said, he's also not a psychic in the books, and he's much more like he'll get down into the action as opposed to the movie one that
And
doesn't as much.
And the family's name is Cavendish.
Oh, so it was, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Cavendish Hall.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll just take a bit of a break from the story here for a second, because that's the beginning of issue 2, and that's kind of the setup for the rest of the story, because that's where we will be for the rest of the story. Since Austin and Doolittle have read this,
your spooky house story.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you guys find out about this book?
Well, I saw Hellboy 2. I was at like my aunt's house. My cousin and I watched it. He was like, Hellboy, like the first movie's cool. We got to watch this. And we watched it, and I was like, that movie was awesome. And he was like, that movie sucked. And like, we just went on, and I was like, oh, like that's really cool. So I eventually found the first one, watched it. I was like, this movie's also really good. I personally prefer the second one, but I like both of them.
I prefer
And
the first one.
then I went to the library and they had Conqueror Worm, which was the fifth trade. And I read that and I was like, I have no idea what the hell's happening. Put it down. And then eventually I started just buying the trades in order. And I was like, this book is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, I think it was just kind of like, I don't know, like I was just like on the internet as a kid. And I think this is around the time I was like getting into like Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe and all that stuff, even stuff like Hans Christian Andersen or whatever. Like all that kind of like the folklore, but also like the pulpy kind of like weird science and stuff like that. Like a lot of pulp stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking all that stuff up, and I think Hellboy just kind of came up because just kind of like that's where some of the influences kind of stem from. And I had read Mignola's Gotham by Gaslight. And also he did an issue of Tales of the Dark Knight, uh, which is, if you go back to it now, you can definitely see kind of the genesis of Hellboy. I think I have it back here. So after this podcast is over, I'll you guys about that.
Cool.
Wish I brought it back here. Anyway, but what happened was like found out about that stuff, and then I was like, well, I'm just gonna watch the Del Toro movies because why not? And I love them both. I was really really happy with both of them, especially the second one, just because of all the creature designs and all the practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
And then that made me want to read the comics, which I love even more than those movies. Even though Del Toro is probably my favorite director of all time, I think that these books are just like so good, like they're awesome. And they're also like they're both different, like they're both like because Del Toro kind of like reinvents Hellboy for his own sensibilities and for what he's trying to tell in the story. He makes it personal.
Yeah, I think that's why the second one I think kind of works a bit better for me, is because he goes full Del Toro. Like like at that point he's not even really looking at the book as much anymore, and he's telling his own original story.
And a lot of the creature designs in the second movie are like from his notebooks and stuff like that, and you get some really creative stuff like Cathedral Head and the Angel of Death, which is like all practical somehow. I don't even know how they did that, but they did it. It's pretty
I'll
cool.
have to rewatch that. I haven't seen it since like the theater. But back to the story. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Well, this being the first episode of this comic review show, obviously we're still figuring out the format. But we learned very much that there's a family. The I just said
Cavendish.
it too. Cavendish. Thank you. Space Jam
Yeah.
2 like just melted all of my brain cells.
Oh my god, tell me about it.
Ultimate Lovecraftian horror.
But we learned that ever since their ancestor, back in like I would say colonial times, because I assume this takes place in the U.S. I'm not sure.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
They've been obsessed with this this place, and like trying to get the secrets inside of it, and that's where the two boys went with Brom, and then they disappeared.
Yeah, funny
three
enough,
boys,
the original guy could never make the trip event. He died actually before the expedition started, and I guess that led to some impetus for like the rest of the family to kind of just fulfill this legacy that never was.
Yeah, it's kind of like a generational, like Moby Dick in a way, just
and
with
you know,
a place, not a whale.
I'm going to argue with what I said earlier, then though, because just now that I'm talking about it, that's very like classic horror, right? Like obsession to the point of death.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially
Sometimes you just got to say things out loud.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Milton, you haven't really gotten to say a lot. I apologize. We're not trying to
Oh,
ignore
no
you, buddy,
problem.
but we are now. So why don't you pick it up here and tell us, or pick up where I left off is what I meant. Sorry.
So just from the point of describing the story, because by this point, once we describe the theme, it's just Hellboy, discovers that something is wrong. Then he goes to fight more frog people, and then discovers that Rasputin is responsible and actually trying to counsel the old woman into essentially, you know, uh, don't reveal the master plan just yet. Don't worry, things will come in time. You do as I say, I'll return your sons back to you. And he does, but of course in the worst way possible. Entire family dies, and the line is destroyed. Hellboy discovers his truth, discovers what Rasputin is trying to do, essentially to bring back the Mignola's equivalent to the Elder Ones, I believe. It's
The
like the Jihads, the
yes,
7 Jihads and
I think
whatnot.
it's like Agdru Jihad or something
Yep.
like that.
Something
Yeah.
That's
like
what
that.
it is. Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
7 of them, and they all have different jihad names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, really cool stuff. I love the world building that's being done. And
Yeah, this is paced really well. I was never like bored or like, can we like move on past the like gobbledygook
Yeah, and I said earlier, like, there's not a lot of story, but it also doesn't feel like it was stretched out. Like, it's just.
Well, I mean, this is one to introduce the characters, the world building, and kind of give like proof of concept for those still going into it. Saying
I'm not a
these are
I'm
the
not a fan
dynamics.
of Abe's design once you finally see him. I don't know. I don't think he looks great.
He could use some improvement, but I mean, granted, it's drawn in a similar coloring and shading style as Hellboy.
The
So I guess
shading
he
and
could use
everything
some
isn't bad. It's just I don't know. There's something like the design is just kind of flat. Like Hellboy like pops off the screen. I think it's maybe just the
improvement.
blue is too light or something. What do you think, Austin or Doolittle?
Maybe just like too like pale blue. I don't know. I don't really have an issue with how he looks. Let me take a.
I don't know.
Look, I like this. I just opened randomly and happened to get an image of him. I like this kind of reaction.
No, see, I like that, but that's not how he looks earlier in the book.
Yeah, I think that's a very Tothian kind of design mentality he has there with the kind of simplicity and the kind of lack of line work. Yeah, that might just be a taste thing. I don't really have an issue with it, but I can understand
fair
where you're
enough.
coming from. It is a bit more minimalistic, and also not entirely consistent. But Mignola isn't always consistent with his designs in the books.
Yeah.
There you go. There it is.
Yeah.
That's the best.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I can't really tell just on the page I'm on. Does Hellboy have like a ponytail like he does in the movies? It's just a random thing.
I don't think he has a ponytail in this.
No, I'm looking at a panel here, and he just kind of looks like he's shaved,
Or has some sort of mullet thing at the back.
On that
It's
same
difficult to
page
tell
you were
sometimes
on.
with the shading, but
On that same page you were on, Austin. This shot is beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
Oh yeah, that one of Hellboy's face.
Yeah.
I looked at that one and it's very like you can see like the movie I think in it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
A lot of the images in this book look really cinematic, like just kind of flipping through like this
Oh yeah, absolutely.
one page
It's
spread.
classic comic design, especially with like the whole page turn. The idea of flipping through what's going to happen, and then you flip over the page, then you see the epic, like freeze
Mhm.
frame for what's going on.
Even just like minimalism stuff, like just the shot of his hand.
Yeah.
This-
yeah.
Yeah. And obviously there's some really good minimalistic shots. I have a particular weakness for like blacks on reds or reds on blacks. So I was a big fan of like this part right here.
Yeah.
Very
Mhm.
like old school.
There's an old technique essentially where you should never try to achieve true black. Rather, blend the colors that are already present in the character and have those go into the blacks that you use for shading in the scene. It helps like keeps the image consistent and actually pleasant to look at.
Yeah. That shot you just pulled up reminds me of the beginning of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, with the shadow puppets against like the black,
Oh, good call. Yeah.
against
Oh,
the red
interesting.
background.
I haven't seen that movie in forever, so I don't really.
Mhm.
Mignola worked on that movie, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Reminds me of
The
that pilot that I sent you guys about Mignola's and the amazing screw on head.
Yeah, which is
yeah.
really cool, and I wish it got made into a series.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I
hey,
guess the other big thing, especially in this art, because this art or this issue, I guess I think we're still on issue 2 out of 4. This is where we really get into some of the fighting and the action scenes,
Yeah, a lot of
and it's
Kirby.
always clear what's happening, which I appreciate because that's not always the case in comic books.
Yeah.
Especially with such like bulky characters, because I've noticed he draws Hellboy really bulky. Um,
Mhm.
at least from like the
Hellboy
waist
is
up.
very bulky with really small legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very much just Hellboy's design. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have like an issue with that other than there's some shots where it just kind of makes me laugh because it looks like he's like all torso.
No, that is very much the Hellboy design. Yeah, like going throughout.
So weird. And then of course he's got his signature stone arm, which
Yeah.
this arc doesn't resolve. Obviously, like why he has that, which I think is interesting. And I'm assuming that will come in as some arc at some.
Yeah, sooner rather than later. Yeah.
Okay. But then you see, you also get shots like this one where I think he looks more normal. Like he's not all torso, which is interesting. Um, but then you get shots like on the same page. There's this really beautiful like blue background and like he's kind of blackened out except for the red on his arms, which looks really nice. But yeah, I mean the majority of the action in this is just the butler stops by and is like, "Surprise! I'm a frog man," and then they fight.
Yeah.
well, I mean, Hellboy definitely took the initiative to like guess beforehand something that we already considered and brought it on, which I thought was a cool way instead of Butler revealing it of his own initiative. I felt it was a cool way to like establish that Hellboy is confident in his abilities.
Yeah, and he's not a new paranormal investigator. Like we said, he's been doing this for a good 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, first and foremost, this is a mystery art. We're trying to find out like who or what killed Brahm, which is obviously an interesting way to start your book. Like you killed the father figure.
Yeah.
Before even really establishing a relationship with them, but it works.
Yeah, it was very fast. The whole death thing. I was taken aback, certainly.
I was too. I was like, wait, what? But then at this point where we're at in the story, he fights the frogman and then comes back to find, as Milton had mentioned, the old lady is dead after making a deal with, I think it was Rasputin, right? Because it's Rasputin behind the
Yes.
whole story.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, you see him talking over his shoulder from the dark.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're right, Austin. He is mostly shaved, Hellboy, except for like a thing in the back.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it's interesting with the broom thing. I really like I said, there's not a lot of it, but I do really like his kind of inner monologue where he's talking about how much harder it is for him to see Broom as like the shell of a person that he is when he comes back from the expedition.
mhm.
I think that's really relatable for like people that have, kind of older relatives, that go through kind of stuff like that. Not, you know, Lovecraftian temple chasing, but like the dementia type stuff.
I guess the other thing I noticed as well, and Doolittle, you may have noticed some of this as well. He has kind of like, and this might just be from my personal experience, but the way he takes like the other players out of the game to make Hellboy the main focus right now is very like shonen manga type, where
Oh,
we find a way to get rid of the side characters, so it's just the main character, and then we
yeah.
find a way to work them back into the story.
Well, I do think it's interesting that they do open like that because I think the kind of driving force behind Hellboy, I guess, like on a deeper, more thematic level, is it's more of like uh, it's a man coming to terms with his kind of inner nature, kind of a story. And I think getting rid of the father figure is an interesting way to kind of jumpstart and initiate that story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, getting rid of the paternal kind of figure.
Yeah,
And then he's on his journey
there's
to figure out who he is.
yeah, there's definitely like definitely a question of like nature versus nurture, like theme
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely brought upon you in perhaps a very obvious way, but I still think very effective. In which like, can a person, no matter where he's from, still come out and be a hero? In this case, Hellboy literally comes from hell. It's
Yeah,
like he's
and
not predetermined to be a villain just simply where he's come from. It's the choices
yeah,
that he makes.
and there's like a kind of a story about like a man trying to figure out his place in the world and rejecting and accepting things based on his own terms.
Hmm.
This is a man who will fail or succeed based on his own terms and find his place in the world. Um, and doesn't like and won't be kind of controlled by things like that. He'll pave his own path, which there's a kind of later on. There's a very beautiful kind of mythology based around, which I'm not going to give away because that stuff's really cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
also the power of friendship. Friends come in to help Hellboy and still save the day. So
I mean that's
but, yeah.
the main thing that reminded me of like a shonen manga. Is that's like
yeah,
the classic shonen, like the main character is only as strong as he is because he has friends. But going back to what Doolittle had said for just a moment, or I think it was Doolittle. Sorry, like I said, my brain is scrambled today. The other thing I noticed at the beginning is we only get a brief snapshot of his relationship with that department or that like agency that he works with.
The BPRD.
Yeah, but it's obviously very different in this book, or at least in this arc, because it seems more like he's like a valued like member in that. Whereas in like the Del Toro movie, for instance, it's almost like he's a grudging respect between him and that one guy that runs it, which I thought was interesting.
yeah,
He's not like, oh, Hellboy went off and did something hot headed again. Like, hate that guy.
Oh,
yeah,
Jeffrey Tambor, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a place where the 2019 film feels more like the books, and that Hellboy can kind of just go to. They do kind of mix it where he is still just like this like jackass that works at the BPRD, but like when he goes into a place, it's like, oh, it's famous paranormal investigator Hellboy. Like it's not that we work in the shadows thing.
Oh, interesting.
yeah. Which is what the Del Toro movies did. Was like kind of had Hellboy in hiding and
Yeah.
tried to make
We're
sure
gonna
that
have to
people
do
didn't know that.
those movies soon, Austin.
Yeah,
Do the
Hmm.
Del Toro and the 2019 one in one video. That'll be interesting. Um,
yeah,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and then I mean, really, once you figure out that the woman is dead and Rasputin shows back up, it's kind of just like all throttle towards the end of this arc. which is him versus. I guess it's not because that's only the end of of issue 2. Weird. Okay.
Well, Hellboy's fighting that frog for like 3 issues. While
Well,
Rasputin is
well, not the
absorbing
same
his
one,
powers.
oh, that's right, because the frog comes back. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Not the same one, thankfully. I think it's like a different one.
yes. So there are 4. There are the 3 sons and one of the other guys on the expedition.
Yeah.
The 3 sons, Hellboy kills one of them at the start. It's the one that kills Broom. The main one he's fighting is the other guy, and the other 2 sons kind of come back and they kill their mother, and then I think they still have some attachment to their humanity, even there, and they just kind of lurk off. Which
So
Abe sees.
the way that Rasputin puts it is the one that Hellboy is fighting, is the last one or one of the last ones, and his last connection to humanity was his mother. When he killed her, it severed his connection to humanity, so he's just pure like monster.
No, it's the 2 sons are the ones that lurk off at the end, or not at the end, but with that Abe sees.
Well, she had 3
Oh,
sons.
he meant literally they left. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's like I think it mentions like their attachment to humanity, but
Well,
it's not.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well,
But
because
they
Abe
meant-
sees them and they're like mourning over their dead mother, and then they both kind of like lurk off,
oh,
and you
okay.
don't see them again.
Some
Well,
of the
you
Abe stuff I had a hard time like telling what was going on in some shots, but also because I took this line too literally, because he says, with the 3 Cavendish brothers, I will confess I had considerably less success. Transformed they were as Olafson has been, but in their heart of hearts, a flicker of their human frailties remained. Having slain their mother, they have gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought he meant like the human frailty had gone, and it was just the monster left.
Oh no, because
No,
it's the person he says that was more successful. That's the one that Hellboy's fighting. That's the butler.
Oh, okay. And Milton, again, sorry for interrupting. I just, since I had that page up, I wanted to say that
No,
real
I
quick.
think he was describing basically like they can never fully commit to being monsters. Hence why they are in weaker forms. Because they had some shred of humanity left in them, which is why he needs Hellboy so much. As like a
Okay.
pure sacrifice of sorts. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and then I mean, the 3rd issue is also kind of split more down the middle of like, you've got the Hellboy stuff where he's fighting the frog, and then it's really just about like catching up with Abe and like
Yeah.
getting him to where Hellboy is for that final issue. So not like you said, not a lot of story. This is another just kind of big action issue, where again it's hard for me to tell where they are because it's just a bunch of blue backgrounds, but it's
Yeah.
fine. It looks cool. And
Yeah,
then this
well,
is
and
also
then-
where we get a lot of the backstory, Rasputin's backstory.
Where he was killed and sent down a river, I think. The idea.
Mhm.
Eventually came back.
He was Russia's greatest love machine.
Yeah, he was like shot and stabbed, and like they wanted to make sure this guy was dead, but somehow he didn't die.
Yeah, I mean, in actual history, apparently, it took him quite a bit to actually kill him. Like he just straight up just like metabolized through poison. Didn't even die on the first shot to the back. It was
Oh,
only until they repeatedly. So
Well, and even here when they beat him, like he gets a harpoon through the chest. He gets lit on fire.
it's not until like Hellboy actually crushes him as he's skeleton bones.
Yeah, this man's Michael Myers.
Yeah. Yeah.
He can
So-
breathe fire.
well, because isn't the idea after they try to kill him in Russia is he makes a deal with I would assume is this universe's Satan? Or
Yes, he made a deal with the. I think he says he made a deal with the. Is it the Agru Jihad that he does that with? I think.
Yeah,
Something
I think
like
so.
that. Yeah.
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 More directly, I mean, I think it was the creature that he came into contact first, and then through that, like, made pacts with the various jihadis. I think it's like Simu something.
And then obviously, also, I forgot to mention this, but we are, at least I assume, I might be wrong, we're also pulling a little bit from Norse mythology in this story. Because what he wants to happen is Ragnarok. And at least I assume that's just a Norse thing.
Yes,
Yeah, it's called
that is
Project
the
Ragnarok.
name.
Yeah.
Basically, with the end times, like the gods will fight in the battle against the Titans and whatnot, frost giants, and rebirth of a new world afterwards, essentially.
Yeah. Should have been snake monsters in this, right? With it being Ragnarok.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know.
Or is that too on the nose?
Well, I mean, you had also maybe. I mean, technically within how Ragnarok is told in mythology, I mean, the gods in many cases went up against each other. I think Thor took on the World Tree Eater, Jormungand or something like that. I forget the exact name of the giant snake. I think yeah, or something. I think like Thor got killed by him or something like that, but I don't know. I mean, Norse mythology also has the image of the Kraken as well, like a large squid monster. So it's not entirely out of the ballpark for that sort of like cosmic or like large tentacle monsters to, be out of focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
Yeah.
But so Doolittle or Austin, what do you guys think? Would snake monsters have made more sense with the whole Ragnarok thing?
I don't know enough about Norse mythology, so I'm not sure, but maybe.
I don't either, other than just the giant world serpent. That's what made me think of snakes.
You bastard! This is about
Maybe
African frogs.
maybe a little bit more, but like I think that in the context of the book, I think Mignola makes a really good case for the frog creatures. Like and also it's just a really cool design, so it's okay.
Yeah,
I
It's
think
okay.
Yes, like
Well, they got their
Jormungandr
awesome tongue thing.
is the
Oh
Midgard
god,
serpent,
yeah.
the world serpent. Yeah.
Yeah, and like don't get me wrong, I love the creature designs in this. That was just something that popped into my head.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, if you wanted to really get on the nose about it, we could have put Ouroboros, symbols all around. Like sometimes that happens in anime and like
Yeah.
D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Then I guess also going back to Austin and Doolittle again, just because out of the four of us, they are the most knowledgeable about this book. What do you guys? Sorry, words. What made Magnolia like make the Nazis kind of like a massive piece of the story? Is it just because he likes that like time period, or?
I'm assuming it's just that kind of mythological connection to the Nazis, where they were looking into the stuff during World War II.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like, it's easy to make that a threat.
Yeah, I think it's also because it's like they kind of fit that kind of pulpy kind of sensibility.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of like kind of
Yeah, when you have a
like
Nazi head like in a jar, like that's who
Yeah.
they're going for, yeah.
Yeah, you know what you're going for, yeah. So I think that's part of it too.
Well, even like when because we don't get much of them yet. We'll get there later. But when we do the origin, when we get the kind of five, or I think it's just five that are there, but they do later on when they're talking to Rasputin, they go through like the major kind of Nazi scientists that they had, and they're all just like, like one of them's a giant ape, one of them is the black masked character. There's
Yeah.
Rasputin. There's the guy with the 3D glasses. There's a guy that's just a head in a jar. Like it's.
So. Yeah.
And he is not a ninja in the books like he is in the Del Toro movie.
Oh, dude, that guy freaks me out in the movie though. Like, because you're talking about the guy that has like no blood and like no eyebrows.
He is just a scientist.
But it takes some inspiration from actual history because the Third Reich was obsessed with any sort of power grab, except for something that was like purely based in science. They highly sought after like dark rituals as a means of like calling to like higher powers or something like that to bless what they believe to be the superior race. So it's this sort of stuff is like what would happen if the Nazis were actually kind of successful in all this weird occult stuff that they were trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very Indiana Jones in that way. It's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
pulpy kind of take on the Nazis.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very pulpy feel, but almost elevates it, I would say.
Absolutely.
Oh, of course.
The other thing I really loved during the flashbacks to the Nazis is, of course, a lot of it is in black and white because it's a flashback or retelling.
Yeah,
But
because
I
color hadn't
always,
been invented in the world yet.
oh, but I always love when you have like the black and white, but you choose a color to like pop out. It always,
Yeah.
it just always
Yeah.
looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope we don't get demonetized for showing swastikas and whatnot. That would be.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
I
we'd have
mean,
to make money to get
Yeah, we'd have to get
demonetized.
That
monetized
is
first.
fair. That is fair.
well,
But
and also it's in the book. Like,
true.
you know,
Yeah.
we're not like endorsing the
No.
Nazis or anything
Yeah,
like
No,
that.
at
Like,
least
yes.
3 out of 4 of us aren't. I don't know about John. He might be
Oh,
cautiously
why?
optimistic, but the rest of us.
No,
Oh my
no,
God.
no. Official
We are
statement
not
from
bringing
Haven
that
Accord.
back.
We do not endorse the
We do
idea
not
of
endorse
Nazism
Nazis,
or
racism, or
racism,
anything like that.
xenophobia, or
yeah, we don't know.
or racist language or whatnot. We are simply discussing something for the sake of it's in the context of this story.
And then, of course, we get page where it tells you the names of all of the things that he's trying to summon. We've
Yeah,
got
the
Aman Jihad, Adad Jihad, Ira Jihad, Namrat Jihad. Mike Mignola is just fucking with me now. Like, come on.
No,
Yeah.
it's all like inspired by prefixes of like ancient like pagan gods. Like Ammon himself is.
I was joking.
Yeah.
Sometimes I take you too seriously, John. But the names are actually inspired by like ancient pagan like names. Ammon, for instance, is I think an
Yeah.
ancient Canaanite deity.
Yeah, and like that's and I think we're all in agreement on that, but if you're telling a story like this, I think it helps it feel more real if you're pulling from real like legends and stories and folklore.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just flipping through, and one thing that I thought was funny is just like definitely a John Byrne thing, which is when Hellboy shoots Rasputin in the face, he yells "Get stuffed," and that just is a weird thing I think for Hellboy. Like, I can't picture Hellboy yelling "Get stuffed." I don't know, it just popped out to
I
me.
can't either. It'll be interesting to see how Hellboy changes because now we're all in the Mike Mignola written stuff, right? Like after this arc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's still like, because I went back to Wake the Devil after reading this just for like, well, what does he sound like after this, just for reference for this podcast. And he is like a bit more wordy still, but like a little bit less than how John Byrne writes Hellboy. The
A
short
bit more of a
story,
transition.
yeah, the short stories is where Mignola gets a better kind of voice for the character
Okay.
moving forward. That's where we get the more like working Joe kind of, or average Joe kind of like working class kind of vibe. Oh boy, like he would be working at the steel mill except for fighting monsters kind of a thing.
We still haven't quite got there with the movies, but one day we will.
We still kind of have that with the Ron Perlman one, except it's a bit more of a childish kind of,
Yeah.
like who he is on the journey.
What would you guys think about like an animated show?
I think this is
specifically if we tried to do this art style, not like some generic art style.
I love that. Yeah.
I think this is ripe for animation, especially now. Please God, let Invincible be the start of a new golden age of like animated superhero properties.
Yes, we could get more of this Hellboy stuff in Amazing Screw on Head too. That was
Amazon.
great.
Yeah.
Amazon, get on this shit. Amazon.
Hopefully Amazon. Netflix would also be good too.
No,
you
they
know-
will cancel it after one season on a
Oh,
cliffhanger.
you're right. Oh, you're right. You're right. Well, hopefully they don't.
Austin,
but
man, you gotta
Hulu,
watch. You
maybe,
gotta
I
watch
guess.
Invincible. You would love it. I'm just saying.
yeah, it's good. It's mighty good.
He's like, stop pointing at me. And then
But
I
Hellboy
love.
show would be good.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Hellboy show would
I'd
be
love
great.
that.
I love the last shot of issue 3, heading into the last issue. You get just a really cool like portrait of Hellboy, and then this that guy, I don't remember what his name is. It's one of the Carvenheims or
Oh, it's the original.
It's the original.
Carventine.
Yeah. What?
What's his name?
What?
What is
Cavendish.
what is up with you and
Cavendish. That's
names?
it. Dude, I told
It's-
you I can't remember names for shit.
You know, he is the original Cavendish.
We'll call him the patriarch. How about that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
no,
he's the original Cavendish, and he possesses Abe to
Yep.
get revenge for ending his family.
It's very convenient timing, but it works out. It's symbolic
for
and
sure.
whatnot. They kind of even discuss like the weirdness of wait, what happened? Seemed rather convenient. It's like, yeah, I guess like the ghost was just pissed off, and it's like, despite the fact that he could have been more pissed off at me at the moment, he was more, annoyed at the serpent for essentially killing his family. So
Yeah.
And then issue 4 is kind of where we get back to the Del Toro movie, or I guess the Del Toro movie is pulling from as well, because it's a lot like the third act of the Del Toro film, where Rasputin summoned the big monster thing, and him and Hellboy argue and fight. I can't remember though. Is Liz a hostage in the movie?
Yeah.
Yes, because that's how he gets Hellboy to put his arm in the thing.
Yeah.
Which all of that is not in here. I thought was interesting that Hellboy never like. I guess what would you say, like his true form never pops up in this story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll get there sooner rather
Yeah.
than later, though.
Mhm.
Yeah, the right hand of doom is coming.
In this, it's he like puts Liz's power into himself. I'm gonna be honest, just on a first read, I wasn't entirely sure what was happening.
yeah, I think that was essentially it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
he
kind of
was
harnessing. Yeah.
he was using his energy and her energy to power up the like that demon creature, which was then being used to break open the Agru Jihad.
The one thing with the thing.
Yeah, he used the thing to help power up the thing to release the thing from the thing.
Yeah, in order to
Are you
charge
saying
the
this is
monster,
a?
you need another battery
Are
essentially.
you saying this is a prequel to The Thing by John Carpenter?
No, it's a prequel to the thing, the prequel to the thing.
The
Yeah.
Swedish
It's the
movie,
Thing
yeah.
cinematic universe.
Yeah, I don't want a Universal. We want our Blumhouse the Thing, right?
Whoa. Wait,
Possibly.
Is that real?
Well, we'll
that
talk about
is
that
a
here.
thing that they were trying to do
Nope.
at least at some point.
Oh my
They're
god.
trying to do it now.
Wait, they are?
We'll
We'll
talk
see.
about it here in a bit.
Okay.
Oh, fuck, where were we?
Yeah, does anybody else have anything they got for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do it like all the
Seed
talking here, guys. So
Destruction?
don't get me wrong. Like, if I'm talking over you, I apologize. What do you guys want to mention most out of this book?
We got a cliffhanger. The Nazis are back.
Right, which is
No one knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, we got the kind of main 3 Nazi scientists that were working under Rasputin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this issue, most of it is just fighting and talking between Hellboy and Rasputin, and then you get the big scene from the end of that movie where Liz unleashes her power and like burns up the thing.
Yeah, and of course, in the books, Hellboy's not immune to fire like he is in the movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even catch that. That's interesting.
It
So does
doesn't
he
really
have?
come up in this book. The only time he deals with fire is Rasputin breathes fire on him, but he's blocking it with his hand.
Is this Hellboy have any superpowers, or he's just a guy with a gun?
He's got
Well,
with a gun and a very
he's
strong
stronger than a normal person. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Oh, and have to give shout out to this panel as well, where Rasputin is like speared.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Much more bloody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like Austin said, this arc ends with a cliffhanger. We get this cool like skeleton punching shot, and I think that's the like most
Get ready to see
extreme.
lots of Hellboy doing, being like,
Yeah. Mostly,
That is
like,
the
he
most like
describes-
extreme all torso shot.
Yeah, he describes his hand as like this thing hits like even harder than a sledgehammer.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to imagine that with a man who has superhuman strength is like, man, that would hit hard.
Wait, I think
well, I mean, yeah, he takes a grenade out, puts it in his hand, shoves it down the frog's stomach, and just holds the grenade and lets it explode in his hand.
yeah.
Yep. Which is how a flashbang would work in that case.
Yeah. And then obviously, as well, I like a lot of the dialogue with him and Rasputin, because Rasputin's like, if you kill me, you'll never find out who you are. And Hellboy decides, saving people is more important than finding out, who he really is, which I'm sure at some point he'll find out anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
The story will demand it at some point.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Well, hopefully within this omnibus, because I'm not going to be able to get the rest of these until October when that box set comes out.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Should
So
be
yeah,
that.
what else do you guys want to talk about with this arc?
I think it's interesting that Liz says he feels even better after all that happens. I almost feel like Del Toro kind of looked at that, and that might have been like his inspiration for how he worked with her in the movie. Almost,
Yeah.
that was kind of a takeaway I thought about. I also like that. I don't know. I like that you don't get a lot of answers. We don't even know what Hellboy's like actual name is by the end of this, which is cool. I like that there's definitely a thread going on with at least the first like 5 volumes of the of this, that there's like a consistent like kind of phase with like the Nazis and Rasputin and all that stuff. It's all kind of one big 5 volume thing. But this is also a beginning, middle, and end piece as well. And I think most Hellboy stuff can be read outside, like as like one and done almost, right? Like Comfort Worm was my first, and I had no issues reading it when I first read it personally. So that is definitely a takeaway I had about it, is that like, yes, even though it's a one and done thing, there's still a through line, and I like how it operates that way.
Yep. I would describe this first arc as a season of television. I think you could adapt that straight, and you would have a good like 8-episode season of television.
See,
Yeah.
I think this for like
I
four
can condense
issue.
it.
I think it's a pilot. Like it's like a 2-hour pilot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
More
could,
than a season.
yeah,
Like
I
a
could
2
condense it
part.
to 4 episodes or maybe even 3.
Well, see, Austin, I'm kind of agreeing with you, but because think about it, eight episodes. Say they're like 30-minute episodes. That's what,
The
like
majority of this is just action, though. At the same
Yeah.
time, like I think this is a 2-part pilot
Yeah,
before
fair
it's
enough.
a season of TV.
I think that omnibus you got there could be adapted as a first season, though. I think this combined with Wake the Devil
Yeah.
could be a season of television.
Well, we will do that
Yeah,
soon.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you could even like pepper in like a short story here and there as an episode.
Yeah, like the
but
corpse or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I will
All to
see how I
say,
feel
we want-
once I read the second arc.
Sure.
Yeah. All to say, we just want more Hellboy animated stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, I want to
absolutely.
watch those animated movies they made like in the
Yep.
early 2000s now.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
they're
a
pretty
Sword
good.
of
One of
Storms
them
and
is
Blood and
based
Iron.
off of, I think, one of the next few
Because
stories.
those are all
isn't
Ron
it?
Perlman, right?
Well, there's a vampire, I think, in Blood and Iron.
Yeah,
so
isn't that like?
next one deals with vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Starring Ron Perlman voices Hellboy and Sword of Storms and Blood and Iron, 2006 and
I think they got
2007
back
respectively.
the main cast, didn't they? Or is it just
Yeah.
Perlman?
They got Selma Blair and Doug Jones back.
Yeah, because they
That's
also
awesome.
they also did the Hellboy game for the 360.
That's right.
Dude, I kind of want to play that now. Is it any good?
I heard it's really bad.
I used to play it, and it's not amazing. It's just like a beat 'em up.
Guy,
Oh yeah.
if anybody that's like rich and powerful in Hollywood is watching this, make a new Hellboy game, please.
Yep.
This
That'd
would
be
make an
cool. I love that.
amazing video game.
At
I
least
mean, this is
Hellboy's
basically
and
like
Justice
a
2.
Resident Evil, like you're stuck in a house thing. Granted, most Resident Evil stories aren't you walk into a house, an octopus pulls you into the basement, and then you fight
I
it
don't
in the
mean
basement
like
for
this
the rest of the
arc
game. But
directly,
yeah.
Austin. I just mean a
No,
Hellboy.
I'm agreeing with you though. Like
Oh.
when I was reading this, I had that thought.
Oh, okay.
It's a new independent adventure.
And with like Devil May Cry and with God of War, it is kind of surprising that we never got like a consistent line of Hellboy video games, because this is so ripe for that, you know. And we had like Asylum Seeker for PlayStation 1, which I've never played, but I've seen footage of. It looks terrible. Um,
Yeah,
we got-
Hellboy's just kind of a franchise that never really got the love that it deserved. If that
at least
makes
in other
That's-
media.
Well, that's why
what I
we're
mean.
doing
In
this.
comics, of course.
Yeah.
This and Madman, I think, are both kind of examples of that.
So I think unless anybody else has anything they want to add, because we're at over an hour.
Yeah,
and this is just
I
a
feel like
4-issue
we've covered it.
series.
Yeah.
I feel like we did good.
I'd like to do issue arc 2 in let's say 2 weeks. You think is everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
That shouldn't be an issue. I think.
that's doable.
2 to 3 weeks.
I'm eager to read more. Yeah.
Well, okay. So, how would you guys want to do it? So the next thing in this omnibus is the Wolves of Saint August, which is like 40 pages, and then you get the Chained Coffin, which is 10 pages. Like,
Oh shit. Okay.
and then after that, it's Wake the Devil, which is like 130. Like, how would we? We'll talk about it after the show.
Yeah.
I
But
think
the
we
main
do
thing
it
I
in
just wanted to
2 or
put
3
on the
weeks.
show was in 2 weeks we will be back with another Hellboy review.
Yeah.
If we get through this omnibus before the next box set goes out, this will go on hiatus until that comes out. And that is the only way that I know of to reliably get my hands on the rest of the omnibuses. And as much as I don't mind reading like online, I'd like to have it on hand so I can maybe flipping through it during the review and not like scrolling through pages.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that happens, Milton, we will do the first arc of The Walking Dead, just to let people know that's something else that's in the pipeline, and I'd love to have everyone here there for that as well.
And we'll do Eilstein Man Thing.
Oh god.
I was being serious, dude. If you think there's enough to do there, I will buy it.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Don't get your hopes up, guys.
I have no hopes because I don't care about man.
It's the thing.
But you like
the
Eilstein.
man thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out while we discussed Hellboy Volume 1. I really loved this. I think we're going to make this more of a discussion rather than a rating at the end, so we're not going to do the rating for this. Just kind of bringing attention to old Heckboy here. Is this story over, like, in all entirety?
Think so. I think the main stuff is done, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still put out like short stories and stuff here and there.
Okay. All right. But yeah,
I think it is.
we're gonna call it here. Thank you guys for hanging out. Doolittle, as always, it was good to see you. Loved talking this with you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Definitely.
We will be back in 2 weeks to do whatever we're doing next in this book.
Yes.
Thanks for watching, everyone.